Kyle, we're seeing the first instance of the pitch clock coming into the deciding factor of a game. We had a tie baseball game, spring training, of course, but tie baseball game. Cal Conley stepped into the box, didn't get set, automatic strike, bases loaded, end of the game. So there's a lot of people upset about this. Oh, you're ruining the game. This is the worst thing ever. Screw the pitch clock. I don't hate it. How about you?
No, it's going to be very fun to watch this happen over the next few months where all these people who hate the change are going to be like, this is ridiculous. It's going to be the end of the sport as we know it. You know what else they said the same thing for when instant replay began in the 2000s? It's going to be the end of the sports world as we know it. It's funny to see everyone get upset.
Element? People make mistakes. So should umpires, right? No. We have a rule book. Let's get the calls right. We have the technology. We can rebuild this game.
Really, for all the hatred of umpires and referees everywhere, this is the time where you're going to say, you know what? Let's give the referee the benefit of the doubt,
Let's give them the chance to be wrong.
Really, as y'all were calling for the public execution of the referees in the Super Bowl for making a correct call on a hold on Juju Smith-Schuster, all of a sudden you're like, oh my gosh, let's let the refs have the discrepancy to call the game.
Do we really want more, what's his name, Jim Joyce, Andres Galarraga moments? Is that what we want? Some more history ruined by like a clearly incorrect call at first base or home plate or whatever the call happens. Yeah, Galarraga is probably more famous because of the perfect game that didn't happen. But I'm sorry that I want to see like our moments in sports unsullied by resistance to technology. And when it comes to that's instant replay. That's a whole different discussion. But when it comes to the pitch clock in general, people are saying like, oh man, is that 30 minutes really worth ruining the game? Well, here's the thing. We know what culture we live in now. We know that we live in a little bit of an instant gratification, microwave culture. Like if things aren't done like in the next 30 seconds, TikTok, just move on to the next subject. Baseball, they do need to quicken the pace a little bit. I think that we all kind of agree with that. And why do I need to see a guy on the pitching mound readjust his crotch every 30 seconds to feel like the game is at a satisfactory pace? Do I have to see the batter jump out of the batting box every 10 seconds to mess with his wristbands or his batting gloves? Is that really the game? Or is the game what's happening on the actual diamond? What's happening as soon as the pitch leaves the pitcher's hands? That's what the game is to me, not all the weird adjustments happening in the game,
So baseball has been saying for years that they want to shorten the games, and the addition of a pitch clock will subtract, on average, based on minor league data, between 27 and 31 minutes from a baseball game. And it's not like it's a dramatic change to the game. It's a pitch clock. It's a shot clock in basketball, basically. That is a really easy fix that will achieve a massive change in how long the games are. And so it's a great idea, and it's going to take some time to adjust. And just like when they just did the intentional walk thing where you didn't have to throw 4 balls outside, after about 6 months, everyone's going to forget about it because it's totally normal.
Yeah, an honest question here. Again, do you need to see the guy messing with his pants? Is that really that important to you? Or what's important to you is the actual pitch itself, the actual swing of the bat, the diving play, all this. There's also talk, of course we're talking about this subject because it did come into play. We have expanded bases, ending of the shift. I think all of these are really good changes to the game. First off, you look at some of the stolen base numbers of 30 years ago, and it's just hard to fathom our guys even coming close to them. No one's touching like Ricky Henderson's stolen base record. It's just impossible because the highest base stealer the last few years has been somewhere around like 50 stolen bases. With the expanded bases, we might see a guy get like 60, 70, 80 stolen bases in a year, because guys are going to be more willing to run, especially too when the fact that they can't even do the pickoff play more than I want to say twice in an at bat. That's going to be really fun to watch. We're going to see more of that cat and mouse game that we've been yearning for. Catchers are going to be so much more important now that they're going to have to throw out more runners at second base. We're going to see a lot more of those plays factor into games moving forward. I mentioned the ending of the shift. it's weird because I didn't think that like baseball traditionalists were going to be upset about this one because the shift is a fairly new age concept as we move into analytics. But just the fact that we'll have more action on the base paths now that they're going to have an opportunity to kind of like get a few more seeing eye ground balls than they used to get with the second baseman playing right field. That's fun to me. The fact that there's going to be action on the base paths, the fact that there's going to be stolen base attempts, the fact that we're not going to spend 3 minutes waiting for a guy to throw a routine fastball after shaking off his catcher 20 times. That's all good stuff to me.
That one's interesting because the shift rule and the larger bases are going to be interesting because the reason stolen bases are down so much is not because the athletes are lesser. It's that all the data points to the stolen base just is not worth it. Like stealing a single base for risking a single out, all the data shows it's just not worth the risk reward.
Yes. What's the line in Moneyball that I pay you to get on first base, I don't pay you to get thrown out at second? Okay, I get that. That's true. But there are guys that have the ability to steal bases that don't, that I think they're going to be a lot more inclined to steal bases with the expanded base. If we're going to pick apart like the rules of the game, that's like an underutilized rule that I think has provided a lot of joy. Again, when Ricky Henderson was stealing like hundreds of bases in his prime, people were like, oh my God, Ricky Henderson's on base. This is going to be like a treat to watch. Just see how he messes with the pitcher, the catcher, whoever it may be. I want some of that. Like I do want a little bit more of that in today's game.
And for the next 2 years, you're going to get more moments of that because what's cool about all these rule changes and these players having larger bases and pitch clocks is that there's data from the minor leagues that we can point to. But for the most part, we just don't have a large enough sample size to know how it's going to change the numbers. And so the numbers nerds, as people like to call them, me being one of those nerds, the nerds don't have the data yet to be able to evaluate and adapt their strategy accordingly. And so that's going to be interesting to watch. I suspect that we're not going to see a 60 stolen base person because of the new rules, but maybe we'll see multiple 50s or multiple 40s. And even that I think is a plus. But I just don't know what the data is going to say.
It's going to expand the pool. And baseball is in a unique situation where they do have a minor league system to try out these rules, test things out. And because of rule changes in the CBA, I may be wrong about this, but they even have a committee now that if something's not working out, they have the ability to change it within 30 days, which that's something that baseball hasn't had the ability to just change the rules whenever an obvious rule change needs to be had.
Oh, I was going to say, they should call that the spider tack rule, where they're basically like, we can just change anything mid-season because of a PR crisis.
See, even like spider tack, people were pissed off. Sometimes, okay, I get the Rob Manfred is not the best commissioner in sport. When you compare him like Silver and Goodell, obviously it's a very thankless position to be the commissioner of any sports league. Honestly, I never understood the spider tack, people getting pissed off at Rob Manfred for changing the rule mid-season. It's like, well, yeah, you can make the argument they could have changed it in the offseason, sure. But the fact is, we all recognize the problem. We all said it was a problem. And then you're getting pissed at him when he fixes said problem. Come on, guys, we have to be a little bit reasonable here.
Every sport has traditionalists. Baseball is the only sport that has gatekeepers. And what gatekeepers are is you can't change the rules and you can't change the sport unless we approve of it. It's a uniquely baseball phenomenon where the traditionalists in the sport have gone so far to actively fight against any kind of change, regardless of what the change is. Now, is part of that baseball having an older demographic? Potentially. Is baseball a whiter sport than, say, basketball or football? Potentially. Is it that baseball leans more conservative? It's also true, but baseball is the only sport that has legitimate gatekeepers that have fought back against the rules. And what I give Manfred and the people in baseball's front office the immense credit for is they have pushed back against the gatekeepers and have gone forth with changing the rules, potentially 15 years too late. Like they were 11 years later than other sports to have instant replay, for example, but they have pushed forward and made these changes for the better.
I accept that baseball is always going to be a little bit behind the curve of other sports, and that's fine because, listen, it's not all completely bad to keep some traditions. I think some traditions are good. Like, I hate that we had pitchers that only go 3 innings now. I think that sucks because I like a good starting pitcher. I like a definitive closer. I like a guy that when you turn to, the game's over. And we're going to see less and less of that. And in fact, pretty much every pitching record that's ever existed is safe to the end of time at this point, given that pitchers just aren't performing at the same levels that they used to. Like I mentioned, all the stolen base numbers, those records are pretty much safe. But it's nice to be able to adapt as the game goes. I mean, we see it with all the other sports, football, basketball. They see a problem, they fix the problem. I'm okay with us trying to think outside the box here. I mean, if baseball really wanted to be full traditionalist, then it would basically be cricket, right? We accept that baseball changed the rules to make the game more enjoyable to watch and become baseball when the game was first created. So now that we're here in 2023 and how the game's going to look different in 2030, 2040, 2050, there's always going to be different ways to improve. The pitch clock, it seems like a change that needed to happen. It seems like a change that needed to happen, like you mentioned, like probably 15 years ago. There's always going to be long games. I like a good extra inning game, and they obviously kept all the runner on second base. I think that's just a regular season rule, though, which over the course of 162 games, okay, that's fine. Playoffs, yeah, I don't want to see a runner on second base in extra innings. I want to see actual play of the game, proper play of the game to make a result happen. I think baseball's gotten it right. I don't think that this situation changes anything because, as you mentioned at the very start, too, players will adjust. Players will adapt. Eventually players will know, oh shit, I only have 20 seconds to get set in the batter's box. Oh shit, I only have 20 seconds to throw this pitch. And you should more or less know what pitch you're going to throw or where you're going to throw it, since we know how much homework is done in the locker room these days in baseball. Like trends and what pitches this player likes or doesn't like, or what spots they're good at hitting at. If you're a smart pitcher, you're a smart catcher, you're a smart bullpen coach or whatever, you're already having those discussions already off the field. So you don't need to be having the deliberation of it on the field.
And it's batters too, because remember, the end of that Braves and Red Sox game was because the batter didn't get into the box with 8 seconds to go on the pitch clock. And so that was an automatic strike call.
Yeah.
So yeah,
you don't have to have that Nomar Garciaparra adjust your batting gloves. You don't need it.
And look, it's going to be better in the long run, baseball. And because this is the other thing that always gets confused. Fighting against change is not preventing change. It's just distorting what the change looks like. Change is inevitable. Things changing is an inevitable part of this life that we live in, not just baseball. This reflects all of society. And so you get this weird neutered version of baseball where it's like you're preserving the traditionalism of 3-hour games. And at the same time, you have 50 plus home runs that everyone's shooting for OPS numbers because that's what gets paid. And so it's going to change no matter what. You might as well embrace the change and actually work to do what the data says is best for your sport, which I think baseball is starting to do. And until we get new data points, so people are kind of going in a little bit blind. They don't know exactly how to find value within the margins because you've changed the rules. And the good news is once people figure out how to get certain value in the margins as evaluators in front offices, change the rules again, make it a constant give and take. And that'll make it way more fun for all of us because then the game won't become predictable because we have all this data that tells us what to do. I think it's going to be super fun. And that's not just because my baseball team might be one of the 3 best in all of baseball this year. I think it's going to be super fun to watch what happens in the regular season in baseball this year.
All right, guys. Well, let us know in the comment section. Are you pro pitch clock? Are you against it? What other changes are you for and against? We'd like to hear your thoughts. Leave a like on the video, subscribe to the channel, follow us on all our social medias. From Juju and Kyle, stay safe, happy, and healthy. We will see you next time.